What's up, guys? Run the gauntlet once again. Today we just want to recap week 3, hit some of those injuries and highlights, talk about some QB streamers for this week, and whatever else may pop onto the show we'll hit as well, guys. So thanks for coming. Here we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Run the Gauntlet Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Jimmy LeBeau here, speaking with Justin Alfiero. Week 3 was a bit of a roller coaster, but what I like about Week 3 is that trends are starting to be defined. But unfortunately, 3 games of football mean more injuries for these football players because they are truly gladiators, modern-day gladiators, and what this game does to their bodies is not okay. There were a few key injuries this week, and I believe you said you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, well, there actually wasn't any crazy injuries this week, but the ones that exist should be talked about. Evan Ingram sprains his MCL. He's considered week to week right now. There's reports coming out of the Giants that he would be out 4 to 6 weeks, which would be pretty crazy. Jimmy G tore his ACL. Rest in peace to that thing. Listen, it's a tough year for the 49ers, right? There's a lot of hype this year. They could come back better next year, but obviously with C.J. Beathard, no Jerick McKinnon, they're going to have a tough time going forward. A.J. Green left that game with his hip injury of sorts in the third quarter. He did not come back, but he said he should be fine for this week. It's just something to monitor as the week goes on. And most importantly, not an offensive injury, which is usually what we talk about with fantasy football, but Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib both hurt their ankles on Sunday for the Los Angeles Rams. Why this is important is that their status is completely up in the air for this week, and they play on a short week. They verse the Vikings on Thursday Night Football this week, which means if they don't play, we are looking at a Vikings offense bounce back. Thank goodness, because I love that offense. The Rams are the third highest scoring team in the league, which means obviously the Vikings are going to have to keep up because they're not going to stop doing that.
And Buffalo just proved that Minnesota is vulnerable on the defensive side of the football.
Absolutely.
That upset, man.
Everson Griffin obviously is a ridiculous story as well right now, not injury related, but hopefully he's okay. But there's questions as to his mental health right now. He hasn't been with the team for the past few weeks.
Yeah, no, he was actually just told by Mike Zimmer today that he's not allowed near the team until he seeks mental help.
Yeah, so that's definitely not good news for the Vikings defense either.
You had mentioned Evan Ingram's injury, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I think the number one beneficiary to that injury, because obviously there's multiple in the Giants' offense, but I think the number one beneficiary to that is Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard had 7 receptions, 80 yards, 8 targets, and a touchdown last week versus the Texans defense after Evan Ingram went down. And this week he's got the New Orleans Saints. I don't know.
Who are terrible.
Yeah.
Their defense.
The last time the Giants' defense was this bad and the Saints' defense was this bad and they played in the Superdome, I stacked that game in fantasy FanDuel, and I won a lot of money. So Sterling Shepard is definitely a big name to watch out. Not a big name, but he's definitely a low-cost name to consider in all daily formats. And even is a probable wide receiver 3 start, depending on how deep your league is.
Yeah, and I would say, because I was thinking of that matchup as well, and the Saints defense and such, and the only difference this year as compared to that year, the Giants offense was a little bit better that year, better than it's been this year. And on top of that, the Giants defense actually really isn't even that bad this year.
No,
at all. But I mean, the Saints, the thing though is that does it even matter what the defense is when Drew Brees and the Saints are rolling out versus you? I mean, they're going to drop the points no matter what. So if the Giants are going to light up this defense, which is allowing more yards and more points than everybody else in the league, we could see a repeat of that 2015 game.
That'd be so fun. That was an amazing game. I'd love to see it. So yeah, guys, week 3 kind of proved a few trends to be correct. Juju Smith-Schuster? I'll be damned, but Juju Smith-Schuster is the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh.
While I don't want to jump to that conclusion just yet, he has at least turned it into a 1A, 1B, and he is benefiting right now as the season goes on. I think I'm still going to wait before I make such a claim like that, as Antonio Brown is the other guy. But yeah, Juju has proved to be every bit of what he was last year and some more. So
yeah. So I think also in week 3 was proven. It wasn't proven, but I think based off the touches, Sonny Michel will be the best rookie running back in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Rex Burkhead did not even get a carry. Yeah, that was insane. He's been the carry monster for them essentially for a while. But this is I brought this up. Hopefully you guys listened to the rookie episode that once Sonny Michel got back in, the Patriots aren't just going to draft that guy to not hand him the football.
Yeah.
And it's generally what happens in the first round. I think first-round running backs that aren't getting that type of treatment, though. Chris Carson got 32 carries in this game. And that was pretty awesome because, again, just another preseason note, that Chris Carson has been the better back pretty much the entire time. This has been going on since training camp for anyone who's been paying attention. And the discrepancy was huge. This was 32 carries to 3 carries for Rashad Penny.
Rashad Penny was active in the receiving game.
So was Chris Carson, though.
I know, yeah.
And
Chris Carson's obviously the back.
Yeah, and I guess let's just grace up. The Chiefs look unstoppable. It's ridiculous. I just figured to just put that there and just leave that as is. I stand exactly where I stand. I said it was going to be 1 or 2 more weeks. Patrick Mahomes has this week coming up, and then after that we will see what those numbers start to look like on a week-to-week basis. But good for the Chiefs, good for Andy Reid, and terrible for the AFC West.
Going back to the rookie running backs, Kerryon Johnson proved to be a true RB2 in all fantasy formats. Kerryon Johnson, he showed efficiency, he showed the bell cow roll, and even that was a revenge game with LeGarrette Blount. Kerryon Johnson still outtouched him.
Here's he did not outtouch him. Actually, it only looked like that on the surface. They had the same amount of touches.
Didn't he get like more receptions though? Didn't that?
No, they each had 2 receptions. LeGarrette Blount actually had more yards on his receptions, but they each had 16 carries. Obviously, one turned into like 100 yards, and LeGarrette Blount had something along the lines of like 40-something yards.
Which is still pretty miserable yards per carry.
He got a lot of carries because it was.
That was actually a pretty miserable yards per carry because to get 16 carries, you want 70 yards because that would be roughly 4 a carry.
Yeah, and good for Kerryon Johnson because that's the first time a Detroit rusher has ran 100-plus yards since Thanksgiving of 2013. As I don't even know which side of the family I was on that year. That's so long ago. And the thing with Kerryon Johnson, you say he's a running back too everywhere. I don't think that's it yet. I had said in the preseason that if you told me today that Kerryon Johnson was going to get 60, 65, 70% of the touches right around there, that he would definitely be that, and I would be all in on him. The problem is that that's not what happened. It's not what happened in this game. So I think to keep weekly relevance to your starting lineup to a point where you could trust him every week, I think he's going to have to separate a little bit more in the touches. But this was encouraging, and he was obviously much better than Blount was in the touches. So see, maybe he separates next week in that. I would just wait for it to happen. If you want to start him this week, do it. But games like this will happen less often than,
I think Blount's carry numbers were a little bit inflated because of the revenge game factor.
I would say that, but Kerryon Johnson hasn't been separating from the Detroit backfield in terms of touches all season. I love him. I love the talent. I think he should be separating. After a week like this, I hope they do. But until we see that happen, I don't think you could call him a trustworthy, definite starter.
That's fair.
But, I mean, hey, trade for him now. I mean, you probably should have traded him for him last week. But
yeah, one of our lows right there.
Yep.
I thought it was interesting that when Phillip Lindsay went down, Devontae Booker had 5 receptions with 7 targets and 5 carries.
I thought that was interesting as well. It shows that the Broncos are pretty committed to keeping that a committee over there, just feeding the hot hand no matter who that is. So it doesn't seem like anyone's going to take the workhorse role over there in Denver. And that's not the best thing for people who own Royce Freeman, like myself.
No, it was not.
But he is going to be their goal line back, and that's worth something.
Another thing I thought was interesting. Tyler Eifert is still healthy, and Tyler Eifert had 6 receptions, 8 targets, and it's a very good game for the Cincinnati Bengals.
No questioning his talent when he's on the field. No questioning Tyler Eifert's talent at all. It's just a matter of seeing him stay healthy. That's why his draft stock had slipped this year, and if he stays healthy, I mean, obviously anyone who took a chance on him is going to do very well.
That's a steal.
And we talk about guys that had some injury problems in the past and just guys getting back on track and stuff like that. How about Jordy Nelson getting 6 receptions for 173 yards? You think that's the real deal, or you think it's just a bit of an outlier for Jordy's season this year?
I don't think it has to be an outlier, and I don't think he has to be the real deal. Jordy Nelson, I know that was such a backwards answer to that question, but as much as I like Jordy Nelson, and I like the fact that Derek Carr has a number 2 option with similar size to Michael Crabtree, Jordy Nelson is also north of 30, and this is the first sign of life he's shown all season. If you own Jordy Nelson and you were patient enough to not drop him after those 2 weeks, which most people were not, good for you. Good for you. He's worth owning. He's worth being on a bench.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Adrian Peterson, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. What else would you expect? Apparently lots of other things, but guys, Adrian Peterson still has plenty of games in the tank, at least in terms of rushing for 100 yards.
Yeah.
And in standard, he holds value on the right matchup, and that would be the same thing for PPR, but I do think he's going to be pretty matchup dependent because obviously with Chris Thompson on the roll on the team, he just has no chance of doing anything else except running for 100 yards when that happens.
Yeah.
How about anything else? Calvin Ridley.
I like that Aaron Jones, even though they were down early, hit 7 yards per carry and led that team in carries coming off the suspension. If they weren't down early, I think Aaron Jones would have been a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
Not so much more efficient, he would have been a lot more productive because of bulk. And the Packers have a pretty decent matchup this week in Buffalo, so I think we can see that happen.
I agree, and Aaron Jones definitely should take that job, as I thought Jamal Williams was a huge steal in drafts. But that was only under the assumption that he would just come in and play good enough and essentially just make the Packers say, why bench him? Jamal Williams played terrible. So that's Aaron Jones' job.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear in the distribution of carries in that game.
And Montgomery is clearly the receiving back. There is not even a doubt in my mind where he stands in that pecking order.
Yeah, exactly. It's just Jamal Williams can pretty much just, if you have him, you can pretty much just drop him at this point.
He's like Nick Chubb, if I were to compare it to the Browns' backfield.
Yeah, except Nick Chubb's good.
Yeah, exactly. Jamal Williams is not worth owning.
Drop him, guys. Drop Jamal Williams. Calvin Ridley. Huh?
Like it,
the
man.
number 1 ranked rookie receiver.
Yeah.
7 receptions, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just as many as Patrick Mahomes had this week, all by himself.
Yo, and with Julio Jones continuing to take double teams from teams, Calvin Ridley will most likely be that beneficiary because Calvin Ridley and Matt Ryan clearly have a connection. They clearly have started to work together. Even week 2, he was effective. Even in week 2, he played pretty well. He wasn't like a superstar by any means, but he was somebody to watch in the waiver wire at the very least coming out of week 2 if he wasn't already owned. And week 1, that was a weird Thursday night start the season. They were saving him.
Yeah, at least you would think off of that performance is worth something. Again, sometimes guys that are talented just prevail for a week.
Speaking of that,
yeah.
What do you think of Cameron Meredith?
To be 100% honest with you, in the offseason, when I found out Cameron Meredith went to the Saints, I was like, oh boy. But I didn't realize the severity of the injury at the time that he had. I do think it's going to take him a little while to work back in. He had a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I really like Cameron Meredith. But just as far as where he is on that team, I think it's just going to take some time to come into what he could be because I overall think he's more talented than Ted Ginn. Just Ted Ginn's been working with Drew Brees for a little bit.
Yeah. He's a nice stash. That's the way I look at it. I stashed him before the game.
He is a nice stash if you have a deeper bench. I think Cameron Meredith's a nice stash. If you have a smaller bench, I don't really think you're going to end up playing Cameron Meredith for the next few weeks at the very least. But I think I could start with 2 to 3 weeks being safe, in which Meredith probably won't have a playable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, the next couple of weeks he's definitely not startable, but, be ahead of the waiver wire, guys. This was a guy that in preseason mock drafts was going in the same range as Robbie Anderson, Nelson Aguilar. He was in that tier, that fourth wide receiver tier. And, I don't think that value is necessarily dropped. I just think injuries happen. And I think he's definitely worth stashing on a deep bench in deeper leagues, 12, 14 particularly.
Absolutely. I also thought we were talking about some rookie wide receivers, or we talked about one rookie wide receiver. I figured it's worth bringing up the name Christian Kirk. Had 8 targets this week, and Josh Rosen's been named the starter of the Arizona Cardinals, so I think that's pretty cool. Maybe they have a bit of a rookie connection. Christian Kirk definitely worth just taking at the bottom of your bench for the week.
Yeah, definitely.
Listen, maybe it turns into nothing. This kind of stuff happens all the time where a guy just has a week, get kind of excited. Obviously, for guys like us, who are super into, we did so much work on the rookies this offseason, so when we see the rookies, it's very easy to jump and get excited about it.
Sorry about that.
Man's a rookie at drinking water. But again, the past has proven that obviously 1 week for a rookie doesn't mean everything, but hey, at the bottom of your bench, I'd imagine you have a couple scrubs. I mean, even we have scrubs. So guys like Christian Kirk, I mean, that fit, if you have a 6-person bench, that 5 and 6 slot are basically just a carousel the entire year. You know what I'm saying? Until you find the proper guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of those guys that you might want to look at, he's owned in less than 50% of NFL.com PPR leagues, is Jalen Richard.
Yeah, I think for PPR, as a running back, that's definitely a guy worth looking at if you're slim at that position.
Yeah, he had 6 receptions again. Week 1, he had a lot of receptions.
It was just weird how week 2 it was like nothing.
Yeah,
that was the only. I wish week 2, because I would like him a lot more right now. I wish week 2 he just had like 2 receptions for like 30 yards. Like I wish it was just like a nice 5-point PPR game.
Just to show you, like, okay,
just to show that like there's not a risk that he's just not involved for a week, because that should, you know what I'm saying? That's just never good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned about that. Derek Carr has shown the willingness to throw to the running back so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. Just I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just that week just put up the red flag for me. Like if he had 5 points that week, I would probably recommend putting a good amount of budget on Jalen Richard right now in PPR.
Yeah.
But because of that, I just think there's a little more built-in risk, as maybe he's a little more game plan specific type of player, game flow specific type of player.
Oh, he's 100% game flow specific. 100%.
This is a guy you had brought up to me. I think it's worth bringing up as he's putting up big numbers this year. Is Jakeem Grant actually a thing?
I think, honestly, Jakeem Grant...
For those of you who don't know the name, he's a receiver on the Miami Dolphins. Very easy to not know who that is.
Yeah, he was definitely an under-the-radar player the past couple seasons, but the way he plays the game, let me put it like this. He plays the game like Tyreek Hill. He's that explosive. I'm just going to say it straight up. He has that type of explosiveness, and he has that type of returning ability, where if you're in a league that values return yards and return touchdowns and receiving like long plays, he's worth owning. I mean, I'm personally, out of my waiver budget, I haven't used any of my waiver budget until this week. So I plan on using a little over 10% of my waiver budget on him this week. But that's only like the Dolphins, man. They are bowling right now. They're 3-0. I do want a piece of that.
They are 3-0, and they do. Ryan Tannehill is surprising a lot of people. I've always thought he was a particularly accurate quarterback. Actually, I thought that was a strength because you can't teach it.
Yeah.
And he gets a lot of hate, and I think the Dolphins are appreciating that severe underdog role that they had this year, and they are seizing this being 3-0.
Granted, they played the Raiders, they played the Titans, and I forget and the Jets.
And the Jets, yeah, that exactly.
They haven't played the big dogs, but
they're about to versus the big dogs. This game versus New England is going to be pretty telling, I think.
Can you imagine Miami was 4-0 and the Patriots were 1-3?
That would be outrageous because that's really hard to come back from.
Yeah.
That would be outrageous. In fact, that's a possibility I did not even think of. And as for Jakeem Grant, let's just stick on him real fast because my thing with Jakeem Grant is that I just don't think... I know I'm much more this guy than you are, but the target share I'm really big on, guys. Devontae Parker just came out. He had 7 targets in Week 1, Jakeem Grant. And then Week 2, he had 4. And then this week, his lowest target total, he had 3 this week. One of his big plays was a fluke of a play. He's not going to be catching touchdowns from Albert Wilson every week. And I just think the target share is going to be hard to keep it consistent considering they have Albert Wilson, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, and Danny Amendola. I just think it's not going to be a play that you could trust on any given week, but I'm sure he has some streaming appeal and stuff like that, maybe worth a spot at the bottom of your bench. That's kind of where I'm at with him. I think even bigger deal than Jakeem Grant, Vance McDonald.
Oh, stop.
I'm going to tell you why. Vance McDonald, coming into the season, was projected to be the starter of this team. He was number 1 on the depth chart. Was coming off of a foot or ankle injury. I forget which one. Missed Week 1. In Week 2, they simply eased him back into the snaps. Jesse James was incredible that week. Vance McDonald also showed up on the stat sheet that week, and they had split the snaps. This week, they were playing Xavier Grimble before Jesse James, and Vance McDonald went off. This is the last available piece of the pie in Pittsburgh, is Vance McDonald. And Ben Roethlisberger loves tight ends, has always loved tight ends, and this was a huge performance. Vance McDonald is much more explosive than your average tight end. Whatever you have to say about his skill set is one thing or another. I think he's perfectly competent. But explosion, athleticism, he has a lot more of that than the next tight end. The Steelers love to stretch the field. I think Vance McDonald has high weekly upside at tight end. I'm sure he'll have his bust weeks, but he's a tight end. They all do.
Yeah.
But I think he provides high weekly upside in a very, very, very high-powered offense in a relatively tough division that's probably going to be playing until the very end this year. And I'm all about Vance McDonald this year. Screw Jesse James. Dream is over. Guys, Vance McDonald is your tight end. I know this is coming right off of me saying Jonnu Smith, but trust me, guys, this one actually makes more sense than Jonnu Smith.
Well, no, I mean, to compare why you like Jonnu Smith to why you like Jesse James and don't like Jesse James and like Vance McDonald are two completely different comparisons to make. This is what I don't like about a lot of the people that talk about fantasy football. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of other YouTube shows. They don't like to acknowledge when they're wrong. Like, I still see guys, they're talking about Deion Lewis, but they predicted Deion Lewis to be the guy and not Derrick Henry. Yet all those dudes, you see the look on their faces when they start talking about Derrick Henry. You know, like, were you really right about Deion Lewis, guys, or were you just saying that and then you still drafted Derrick Henry? Like, I respect that you acknowledge that you were wrong on that. Like, I really do, because it's not a lot of things. And like I was saying, like, to compare that, Vance McDonald, to Jonnu Smith, that's not even fair. Jonnu Smith's a flyer you take after an injury. Vance McDonald is coming off an injury and is a starter on his team. The reason I say, oh, stop, is because Jakeem Grant can be effective in 2 assets of the game, whereas Vance McDonald really only has the one. I'm not saying the one is bad for a tight end his positional value was higher than Jakeem Grant's positional
Well,
value.
and that was really what I didn't say it outright, but that was kind of my point, is that he holds more value there. So, like, your chances are you need Vance McDonald on your team more than you need Jakeem Grant on your team.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the explosiveness, Jakeem Grant has shown this.
If I indirectly compared his explosiveness
You
to
did not. You
Jakeem
didn't.
Grant,
You didn't.
that was
It's
not my
just
intention.
interesting that you're talking about his explosiveness immediately after Grant. But
Well, I was comparing him to tight ends.
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm just.
Yeah.
no,
I was about to say, if I said that, guys, please.
no,
Someone slow the roll here.
It's just I like that they've been just really trying to get the ball in Grant's hand. They're coming up with creative ways to get the ball in his hands. They're letting him return. They're doing some trick play stuff to get him the ball. I think with Ryan Tannehill, who, believe it or not, guys, in the Dolphins' last 11 starts with Ryan Tannehill, Tannehill has won 10 of those games, and in those 10 games, he has completed over 70% of his passes. All this guy has to do is give Jakeem Grant the ball and let Jakeem Grant do the rest, and that's why I think it'll continue to see some of this big play upside. I don't think it'll be every week, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I just have a tough time trusting guys like that. I think he's worth a spot on your bench. My thing with a guy like Jakeem Grant is that it's
Random.
yeah, and again, it's a game you never want to play because you just never know when the week's going to come. And it's almost with guys like Jakeem Grant, it's nothing about the matchup. He just has the touchdown on that week. It's just that week. And if you don't play him on that week, chances are you're dealing with a dud, especially if your league does not reward return yardage and things like that. And it's tough. I mean, obviously when it hits, but you obviously are probably going to have much better options than Jakeem Grant at wide receiver, I would hope. If not, you either don't listen to the show or are dealing with a few injuries.
I think a nice alternative to a Jakeem Grant would be Devin Funchess.
Okay.
I know Devin Funchess. I'm not sure what his own ownership is across fantasy leagues, but Devin Funchess is the clear-cut number 2 passing option in Carolina behind Christian McCaffrey. And if they're going to use Christian McCaffrey in the role they did last week because of game flow, where he got 28 carries and 184 yards, hope you watched the show because that's a fat W. Devin Funchess was the number 1 receiver in an instance like that.
Yeah, and I think it's important with Devin Funchess too, because what I always say about guys, I mean, I haven't said it many times in this podcast, but I think it's important, I brought it up with DJ Moore when we were talking about rookies a while back, is that it's really important when evaluating if a guy's going to play his role in the offense, does he bring something to the team that no one else on the team brings? If he does, he's going to be used. That's why they have him. Yeah. Devin Funchess is one of those guys. They don't have other receivers like Devin Funchess. He's that guy, especially now with Greg Olsen's foot injury. There is nobody on that team that brings what Funchess brings, and he is going to be a weekly factor in and out. I think he's probably owned in most leagues, if I'm not mistaken. I'm definitely not mistaken. Devin Funchess.
10-team leagues, you might see him. 10-team
maybe
leagues.
If you're lucky in a 10-team league, you'll see Funchess sitting around. If not, though, maybe a guy doesn't value Funchess. I think he's going to have plenty of touchdown upside this season. I think he's going to continue to play well, so maybe you could buy him low if that's something that you're interested in doing, if the person that owns him maybe doesn't value him.
Yeah.
Because he should not be benched. If he's on that guy's bench, he probably values him a lot less than he should. You should probably trade for him.
Yeah. And sticking in the Carolina offense, Ian Thomas had 5 targets. Ian Thomas has separated himself as the tight end in Carolina without Greg Olsen. That has helped. Like, if you're tight end needy and you just want to take the flyer on that guy, go ahead. Screw it. 5 targets, all you need is 3 receptions, 10 yards, and a touchdown out of a tight end to be happy.
Yeah. I will hold my judgment on Ian Thomas. I have no opinion on Ian Thomas.
No, I mean, I haven't seen the man play,
He's
but
the starting tight end for the Carolina Panthers, and you could take that value or you could leave that value. That's kind of where I'm at there. I don't think he does anything particularly well, but I'd be lying if I said I've watched a real good amount of footage on him. So,
Benjamin Watson, you think he's worth a pickup?
Absolutely. Drew Brees' tight end is always worth a pickup, my friend. Josh Hill has been getting unnecessary touchdowns for like 3 or 4 years now, so Benjamin Watson already has a history with Drew Brees, was already amazing that year, and Ben Watson just kind of one of those guys that just never ages. Kind of like Larry Fitzgerald, except what's going on with Larry Fitzgerald this year?
Sam Bradford can't play quarterback, and Steve Wilkes is a terrible coach, and the Cardinals just lack talent, and the Cardinals are trash. That is impacting Larry Fitz in a very negative way.
Here's the thing, though. Do they really lack talent? My thing with the Cardinals is that their offense is terrible.
Right.
But, I mean, they have David Johnson. They have Larry Fitzgerald. They have J.J. Nelson. They drafted Christian Kirk. Ricky Seals-Jones, I think, is a nice, explosive young tight end. Do you think maybe there's a chance for a turnaround here with Josh Rosen at quarterback? Or at least a turnaround statistically for some of these guys?
I think you will see Larry Fitz at least not getting 2 points in PPR. Like, I think he'll start approaching, those 3 receptions, 40, 50-yard games that Larry Fitz is known for having. That's his floor. The only 2 people that are actually established in Arizona right now are Larry Fitz and David Johnson. Everybody else is really not established at all. Like, everybody else is so far from established or ever being relevant in fantasy football without Carson Palmer at quarterback.
Yeah.
That, I can't even trust any of it. Especially without Bruce Arians.
Yeah, I would agree. It's an interesting segue to make, but Bruce Arians was once the coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and we were at the Indianapolis Colts and Philadelphia Eagles game this week, guys. It was really fun. It was raining out. We wanted to take a little more footage. My phone's a little outdated. And the screen, quite frankly, just wouldn't work at all for anything. Yeah. I was trying to unlock it, and just the 6 was just not working. So I was not even able to get on my phone the entire game. I think Jimmy was maybe able to get in one video. But the big story coming out of that game was the Colts taking out Andrew Luck on the Hail Mary and putting in Jacoby Brissett. Is this a big deal? Jimmy, I will let you start, as I'm sure I have a lot more to say than you.
I think it's a big deal, not even so much because it will impact his fantasy stats going forward because he's a clear-cut starter. Jacoby Brissett is not taking Andrew Luck's job. I think it just goes to show that the Indianapolis offense,
which is basically the poor man's Philadelphia offense,
they don't do as many RPOs. Frank Reich has installed a different offense at Philly, compared to Philly. It's similar. They have a lot of the same wrinkles, but I don't think it's that similar.
I just think they're trying to do a lot of similar things, is all. I think they're trying to get all these running backs involved, and they really like their running backs, even if their running backs aren't the best.
Yeah, not sure. Naheem Hines and PPR people pick that up. But back to Andrew Luck. This is a bad sign in the sense that they're not going to stretch the field too much in those first 3.5 quarters when Andrew Luck's going to be out there playing every snap without question. This also hurts his value if Jacoby Brissett does hit one of those home runs. Those are points that your guy's not getting. And, I don't like that. I really don't. I'm not saying cut bait with Andrew Luck unless you have a perfect backup in place, unless you're smart enough to draft Mahomes or something, in which case Luck should be your backup.
Well, I would love for there to be a stat found of people not named Aaron Rodgers. How many fantasy points have quarterbacks scored off of Hail Marys in the past 4 years?
That would be interesting.
5 years? Because I could imagine there's only a handful that were completed and that you got the points for. But, hey, if it was Brissett and not Luck, that would be awful. Unless, someone caught it that you had.
Brissett did have a couple last year, too.
Not caught in the end zone that I know of off the top of my head. If he did, they would have won games, so excuse me if I'm mistaken, but they did not.
Right.
Here's the thing with Andrew Luck. I do think that there's something to be said about them not throwing the ball down the field this year. I think it's very specific. I just want to tackle the narrative that's now being placed, which was completely a non-existent narrative in week 1, but, everyone needs a story every week. The narrative that this is because Andrew Luck's shoulder injury is false. And I'm going to tell you why. If it was because of his injury, he would not be throwing the ball 41.6 times per game this year, which was more than he did before the surgery. 41.6 attempts per game. He threw it 53 times in week 1. So I think a lot of it has to do with getting the ball out of his hands fast, as Luck obviously has had a tendency to hold on to it in his career. I think Reich really wants to beat that one in. But, as far as his fantasy prospects, I do think there's something to note here. In 2016, last time he played, he was averaging 173 air yards per game. That's the amount of distance the ball travels in the air without the yards after the catch, for those of you who wouldn't know. That was ranked number 6 in the NFL that year. This year, that has dropped down to 113.3 yards per game. That's number 24 in the league.
That's not good.
Puts him in terrible, terrible company. 2016, he averaged 4.8 air yards per attempt. That was number 8 in the league. And this year, 2.7 air yards per attempt. That ranks 30th in the league. As compared to 2016, he's averaging one full less deep attempt per game, which deep attempts in advanced analytics are considered to be anything that's 20 or more yards down the field. He's averaging 3.3 of those per game this year, as compared to 4.5 last time he would play. and his longest completion of the season was actually that wheel route on the sideline to T.Y. Hilton against the Eagles. So I think there's something worth noting there. I don't think you have to worry about injuries, but there is something interesting about the way the Colts are game planning. They are trying to get the ball out of his hands fast. I had observed it in the preseason that it would just drop back right there. They're really treating it West Coast, and that's a little different for Luck. But they don't have a supreme amount of deep threats, the Colts, so that is worth noting as well. I'm not sure if you should be worried about Luck because he's still going to have a lot of attempts. He's still a very good quarterback, and this offense is most likely only going to get better as the season goes on. So I would not panic with Andrew Luck, but I did display to you some stats that maybe are just some food for thought.
Very concerning.
Yeah, no, food for thought for sure. Do you happen to be surprised at all with the way that the Dallas Cowboys have played this year?
I thought they played really well to start the year. They were able to hold the Panthers to 16 points of total offense. I think their defense is fantastic. It's just that offense is really, really not good outside of Ezekiel Elliott.
No. And I'm surprised they haven't used Elliott, leaned on him a bit more as the weeks have gone on. I know it hasn't been game plan specific. I just don't understand why they don't go to him out of the backfield a little more often. That's what I had anticipated coming to the year. I drafted him first overall, actually. And, I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong. It's just the offense has been terrible. Dak Prescott has not been good at all.
He's
boy,
a bum. He's been a bum of late.
He has been a bum of late. I don't think Dak Prescott's a bum. I'm huge on his talent. And if you had caught a couple of my mock drafts, which you haven't because I didn't put them out to the public, I had drafted Dak Prescott enough times. So if you were like me, what you're realizing now is that you can't start that guy. And what does that mean? You got to probably stream a quarterback. Am I right?
Yes.
All right, well then we should probably get into QB streamers for this week for all those Dak Prescott owners and all those Patrick Mahomes owners as well. Maybe you want to stream a quarterback if you have him too.
You're such a troll. You're gonna beat that one into the ground until he has like 2 touchdowns, and that's gonna be like, see, he had 2 touchdowns. Yeah, but let it be known that Patrick Mahomes is now the Vegas betting odds favorite to win the NFL MVP award, followed only by Aaron Rodgers.
I now know.
That is ridiculous because I don't think a quarterback in their first year starting has ever won an MVP like that.
No, and a quarterback in their first year has still not won the MVP like that. So
no, I mean I'm not crowning him MVP yet, but his rise has been absolutely.
Listen,
soaring.
Patrick Mahomes has been absolutely incredible. I'm not saying he hasn't been incredible. He'll continue to be very good. All I'm saying is that the stretch that we're watching is the best Patrick Mahomes stretch of the season. So you could either keep him, which is fine, or you could use his value right now, which is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy, and flip it into something that might be worth more than Patrick Mahomes is by week 7 or 8.
It's fair.
So again, streaming quarterbacks. Eli Mernon versus the New Orleans Saints this week, I think is a beautiful streaming matchup. The Saints defense is starting to look like the Saints defense again. No one's allowing more points. No one's allowing more yards. I mean, they are just the worst. The Saints defense is just the worst. Obviously, we've seen this before. Eli versus New Orleans should be very good this week. And I also don't think it's a bad idea to play Derek Carr versus the Cleveland Browns because why not? I think anytime anyone versus the Browns, I think they deserve consideration. Even if we think this is a different Browns team this year, I do think that any quarterback versing the Browns always deserves streaming consideration.
Yeah.
Do you have any streamers for yourself?
Ryan Tannehill.
I have Ryan Tannehill as well. It's a good one.
Ryan Tannehill I think is really good. I think Baker Mayfield is really good.
Have him as well.
And Blake Bortles even if you have to against the Jets.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I probably wouldn't use Blake Bortles. Yeah, Oakland, though. Baker Mayfield, that's going to be fun this week. Oakland has no pass rush at all, so I think it's going to be a good... So just the same way the Jets couldn't get to Baker Mayfield in this game for the most part.
Yeah.
They had a few moments.
They didn't even try. They weren't blitzing.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Jets Nation has not been gifted with the greatest pass rushes and think that blitzing is the only way you should be able to get one, and they had incredible defenses without a pass rush. Imagine if they just had it.
That'd be something, man. That would be, they had to use their draft pick to get Darnold and not Chubb.
Yeah. Of these guys, though, I do think that Eli and Tannehill would be the best two. They'd be the first 2 on my list in that order. And Baker Mayfield, that's going to be a fun one this week. I mean, that's just fun, right? If that works for you, you'll be very happy, probably happier than if one of those other guys works for you, because Baker Mayfield is just a, first pick in the draft. It's a much sexier streaming option. Oh, and one more. Guys, if Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't picked up yet, as a lot of people still don't have faith in him, probably shouldn't.
He is the number one quarterback in fantasy football.
It's hard to make the argument against him right now. Ride the wave while it lasts, guys. Ryan Fitzpatrick, final streaming option this week, and probably just start him until it stops.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of weapons over there in Tampa Bay for him. Guys that type of players that he's had success with in the past as well.
Yeah. No. Mike Evans.
Mike Evans, best receiver he's ever played with.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Evans would be pretty hard-pressed to match the numbers of Brandon Marshall.
The numbers, yes, but Mike Evans is, I think, better right now than Marshall. That was pretty much, he was just ending. That was really the last burst from Marshall.
Yeah.
So I feel like if Fitzy was the starter for the next 2 years here, let's talk about the nonsense. Mike Evans is obviously only in his prime and continuing in it.
Yeah.
And he likes throwing to Deshaun Jackson, too. So, yeah, guys, Ryan Fitzpatrick, if that hasn't happened yet, it's not the funnest thing to talk about at this point because, it's 3 straight 400 yards a week. It's just kind of getting old. We're not the ones telling you about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Everyone is telling you about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
One thing to note, folks, there are a lot of suspensions ending at this time of year. This is the final week for Mark Ingram owners to have that. If you want to potentially make a buy low on Mark Ingram before he comes back, while that question mark still exists about what he's going to do, I say do that because Alvin Kamara has not done a lot carrying the football. It's all through the air. Alvin Kamara's role as a receiving back is unquestioned. Yeah. Alvin Kamara's role as the between the tackles back is 100% still in question, and Mark Ingram is the answer. I assure you of that. They have not addressed that issue. They have just been throwing with Drew Brees. This is why he has thrown 15 touchdowns or something.
Yeah, and their offense has not missed a step either, so Ingram's going to come into a high-volume, high-quality offense, obviously, as the Saints are just of legendary proportions.
Drew Brees is something else, man. The second I start to think, man, you know what? Maybe this is the year Brees hits the cliff. Everyone wants to talk about Brady hitting his cliff.
He actually showed you no evidence of that.
His numbers dipped. His numbers considerably dipped last season.
Highest completion percentage of his career, best touchdown to interception ratio of his career,
lowest yards in recent memory, and
they had
touchdowns.
The best rushing season of basically any team ever.
Yeah, but it's still a decline. They still took that pressure off his throwing ability, off of his volume. They took that volume away, and that's a sign that the guy is just not doing. He's not going to do that anymore.
We're never going to agree on this.
I mean, clearly I was wrong. Clearly, Drew Brees will probably be one of those all-time greats that just plays at an elite level until the day he just decides.
He wants to stop.
Yeah, until he decides he doesn't want to be the quarterback of the Saints anymore.
Yeah.
And Teddy Bridgewater becomes the quarterback of the Saints.
And also, the Patriots, not that I'm saying that we should worry about the Patriots, because this is just, they write the story for themselves every year. But they really need Julian Edelman back right now. He's also on his way back from suspension as well. Just take what you want from that. Maybe you trade for him, and maybe the dude that has him just can't wait anymore. Other than that, are there any other suspensions that are important that you could think of?
Not really. None of that are really truly worth noting. It's just,
Aaron Jones had already come back, so
that's about it. Honestly, there wasn't really that many this year.
All right, guys. Then on that note, I think we're going to end it right here. Time is valuable. Our time is valuable. Your time is valuable, and I think 40 minutes is plenty of your time to take for something like this. So, guys, I'm Justin Alfiero. Right next to me here is Jimmy LeBeau. This is Run the Gauntlets Fantasy Football Podcast, working in partnership with the Game Changer Sports Network. We are here to provide you with great sports content throughout the entire year, guys. So thank you for listening. See you next week.
Check us out on Facebook. Check out their website, www.thegamechangersportsnetwork. Check out the Run the Gauntlet Facebook and the Game Changer Sports Network on Facebook. Also, be sure to check it on YouTube, where most of our podcasts are posted, and SoundCloud as well. So, just give those a look, guys. We really appreciate all the love you've been showing us, and we hope to keep building this thing, and we hope to keep building a family and a community with all you guys. So, best of luck to you, and you'll be hearing from us later on during the week. One thing, folks, because we were at the game in Philadelphia, our coverage was not up to par of pregame Week 3. Week 4 will be much better. Expect us to be a lot more there with you in terms of start sits, a lot more nitty-gritty before the game starts. We were living life, we were enjoying it, but that does not mean that should hinder your success. Expect better coverage of Week 4. Promise you that.